89.5 WSOU. This is Talk Art Radio. My name is Ed Fines. Good morning. We've been away for a little while. Hopefully you haven't missed us too much. Got fresh stuff for you today, and about as fresh as you can possibly get. As Carrie Esposito has a novel. Now, this novel isn't published. You can't buy this in stores. It's called No Way to Fall Off This Earth. And we're going to talk about how that book came to be, based on a lot of her amazing, rather eclectic experiences overseas in India, and then working in Brooklyn as a vice principal. And we're going to hopefully see the moments just before everybody gets to know her as a published author. So this is our half-hour sit-down with Carrie Esposito, budding novelist. 89.5 WSOU Talk Art Radio. Okay, so let's start with the very beginning. Having looked at sort of the query or the kind of the summary, the pitch of the novel, I want to know kind of how we would like to know how the kind of the novel came about in terms of sort of the kind of the two spheres of your life, the vice principal sphere, and then your experiences in India, how that kind of became the novel.
Well, I was working as a vice principal at a all-girls school, and one of my responsibilities was to make sure our roster was clean, so to speak, meaning that any students who were listed as names on our roster were showing up at our school. And these two girls, twins, whose names I changed for the novel, were not showing up to school, but they were on our roster. And eventually we researched and found out that they went to India with their father. And I became very curious about them, being that most of our students are with their mothers, aunts, grandmothers. Even to be with their father was a unique experience. So I was curious about what happened to them, and I started imagining their lives in India with their father. And I started it out as a short story, and eventually it's a novel. And it also, an adult character came into the story who takes the girls, and she sort of developed a story of her own within the girls' story.
So the girls, the school you were at, was that particularly? So it was a math and science.
Yeah, it's a New York City public school, and it's run by the Urban Assembly, which runs a group of schools for the New York City Department of Education. So it's a regular New York City public school.
Oh, right on. Okay. So you were having, that community, it was sort of all, anyone from, you have a rather large, there's no demographic at all.
Well, not quite. The school it was eventually in downtown Brooklyn, but it started out in Crown Heights. And so most of the student population came from the neighborhood.
Okay.
And that's actually a huge part of the book, because the school population was generally 80 to 90% Caribbean American, so students mostly whose parents were coming from the islands, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, and we had a very small Bengali population, and the two girls in the book come from that population, and there are many of those girls that would try to fit into the Caribbean American dynamic, but would still wear their headscarves and their cover from head to toe. And then there were other of the Muslim girls that were very shy and could not fit into that environment because it's a very, very different culture. And the twins in my book, one of them is more the type that tries to fit in with the Caribbean American culture, and the other one is very shy and introspective, and she's the narrator of the novel.
So let's plug in kind of the other seed of your time in India. The main character of the novel is coming over from the U.S. to visit a significant other who is in India, and that's where she meets the girls. So is that
right?
So what was kind of your story in terms of going back and forth to India?
Well, I was going to India actually when I worked at a corporation, and I was going there to train people. And while I was there, I lived there for quite a while, and I spent a significant amount of time with different families and traveling around the country. And I just fell in love with the culture and the color. most of my time was spent in Delhi, where most of the novel takes place. So, yeah, and I also went to Rishikesh and some of the other places that they visit in the novel. I included partly from experience, but my experience of India is, I think, inspires some of Amala, who's the young girl's experience of going to her home country for the first time and just being so enthralled with some of the color and song and just the general experience of India.
Actually give the folks a quick kind of plot summary, but yeah, I don't give it all away, but certainly what is sort of the basic outline of how the story is working?
Well, so the story is about this American woman who is in India visiting her significant other, as you said, and she ends up taking in the two young girls who were brought to India by their father and become estranged from him while they're there. And the story basically follows Amala's desire to connect to her homeland and to her father, who has been sort of an absent figure in her life up until her mother's death.
So it's from the perspective, it's not third person.
The story is narrated in the first person by Amala, the young girl, and also by Gwen, who is the adult woman. So
how do you approach the craft? How are you as a worker? Is it an everyday thing? Does it come in big chunks? Is it a discipline? Is it sort of the Hemingway discipline, or is it just sort of, more of the painter, the artist? I feel a feeling, and you'll just hang out.
No, I am the opposite. I strongly believe in the Stephen King, Hemingway. You sit at your desk every day and you just write, and that's what I do. I write every day at the same times every day, and I don't really take any breaks from it. And if I end up with large chunks of time, like I love when I fly to New York by myself without the kids, because I just write for 4 hours straight. And I think that's what it takes. I love Flannery O'Connor has a quote about she put her feet in a bucket of water when she's writing, so it's too much trouble to get up, and that's just kind of how I look at it. You just sit and sit.
I've never heard that. That's amazing. So, I mean, is it a very sort of alone? I imagine a lot of Flannery's, I guess maybe this is just the mood of her work, that sort of lonely. You mentioned her putting her feet in a bucket. Like, I want to leave the desk, but I can't. I have to stay. Do you find how often do you find those kinds of moments where it's like where it does feel more like labor, I guess?
Of course, like sometimes I'll be writing and an hour will go by and I'll look at the clock and say, oh my goodness, like that was, I can't believe that. And then some days are harder. Like I'll look at the clock and be like, wow, a minute went by. I'll be like, oh, I would like to get it, it just goes back and forth. And I think that's why it's important to write every day, because you're sort of more inspired days. And then you have your days where you're just kind of plugging along, and then maybe one good line comes out of that day, and that's great.
The work you're doing in the short story is the sort of short story realm right now. Is it completely divorced from? Do you find that you are traveling on a similar road because so much of your labor has gone into the novel that your brain is still kind of processing a lot of those themes, or is it? I mean, not to say you've like, oh, I'm writing a science fiction short story about robots. It's like are you finding ghosts of the novel in the short stories you're writing at all?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. I mean, one of my writing teachers who I loved in New York said that writers tend to have their obsessions, and I do think that's true. So it'll manifest in different ways. But, I think I have a lot of obsessions with families, relationships, and I think those themes will keep coming up in my novels, and also culture and, the differences between people from different cultures. I have another story I'm working on right now set in India, and I think that's the main theme of that story, is how two people, an Indian beggar woman and a girl, a white woman who's in the Peace Corps, and how they interact and how their stories clash. So I do think, yes, I think that I do have my obsessions, and they will keep coming up. But I don't find the novel a distraction, in the story. The story feels like their own characters and their own situations that feel completely new to me.
Other than the characters of Gwen and the sisters, what what's the next character of sort of second tier of characters that you really loved putting in there? The sort of the kind of, I don't know, in a movie it would be sort of a character actor person, like somebody on the side. Like what's your favorite? Who's your favorite person that you kind of dropped into your universe and you're like, oh, I really like that person.
Like a small character or someone on the next big one?
Yeah, someone at sort of the next level who isn't necessarily.
Well, I love Heinrich, who is Gwen's boyfriend, and I think people who are reading the book may feel ups and downs about him, but I love him as a character. I really felt like I understood his motivations when I really tried to get in the head of a male and how, sort of the trauma that he was experiencing in his life and he wasn't getting what he needed from Gwen. And I just found that really intriguing to write about him. And I also really like Baba, who's Amala and Zara's father, who, originated as sort of a more of an evil character and has really evolved into somebody who's really nuanced. And he really is based on a lot of the fathers I met in my school and trying to figure out what is going on behind the scenes in their heads and, sort of some of the sadnesses and frustrations that they experience being in America, maybe not being able to care for their families in the way that, a father would like. And I really liked exploring that with Heinrich and with Baba, the father's perspective, and, how much fathers want to be providers and want to care for their families, and when they can't do that, what happens to them, and who do they hurt because of it? And I really liked writing those guys.
Well, that's really exciting because I would have, knowing what I know about the story, I would have said those are the two guys that sort of. Like, oh, everyone's going to go boo. Like, I'm thinking like an old 30s, or a silent film or something where everyone's like, boo to the guy with the black mustache.
No.
The two men who may be in the black hat characters aren't the black hat characters at all. That's really exciting. That to me is a great story.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for popping on with us. I'm really excited. We'll check in every so often to see, maybe once knock on wood, something happens. We'll definitely love to hear about the wins.
Yeah, re-interview me.
Yeah,
afterwards.
Successful. You'll be writing, on the phone with your, got a movie rights and foreign rights and all those sorts of things.
Gosh. I already have all my actresses and actors picked out. So.
Everyone, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. This is Talk Art Radio on 89.5 WSOU. And that was novelist Carrie Esposito. If you want to keep track of how Carrie's doing, how the novel is coming out, and other short stories and other new writerly things that she's doing, you can go to sites.google.com/site/books by Carrie Esposito. That's CarrieEsposito. You can find us at talkartradio@gmail.com, or you can just tune in here Saturdays at 9 a.m. Or, third option, our podcasts, which are, if you type in WSOU into the iTunes Music Store, you can find everything that we have ever done, all the people we've talked to. So, for Mark, this is Ed Fiennes, signing off. We'll see you here next week.